Welcome back to Glamour Unfiltered, hosted by me, Josh Smith. And in a very special edition of Glamour Unfiltered, we are going to meet some of the NHS frontline workers who kept this country going during the global pandemic. So what's your experience been like of working in the NHS during the last year, and how's that changed? How's that pivoted?
I think at the start of it, everybody was just, rabbit in headlights. How are we going to get through this? We're going to run out of bed capacity. It's just going to be traumatic for everybody, personally, professionally, just at all sorts of levels. And I think to begin with, it was that adrenaline got us through. And the whole thing about we are the NHS, we're going to rise to this, and we're going to make things happen. And then fortunately we didn't run out of beds, and services got stepped down, and just the most amazing, you think something so negative and so stressful. We had such a wonderful experience here with staff that had previously been working maybe in sexual health services and children's services, and just that can-do attitude, we'll get through it together.
We found ourselves with staff sickness and everyone going off all at once. It was a matter of everyone just covering each other, working weekends, working on each ward, just helping each other out and trying to do, okay, I'm a therapist, but if the nurses needed help, if the healthcare assistants needed help, just trying to pitch in wherever you can. People were dying and people were suffering from it, and even the people that were coming through onto the other side were still experiencing what we now know as long COVID, like the effects on their breathing, on their walking, and their day-to-day was still so impacted. We've had a lot of patients who've had lots of long ITU stays, acute stays where they've been on in comas basically with COVID, and when they've awoken they're really out of breath, they're not able to stand, they're not able to walk because it's completely taken them off their feet, completely knocked them for six. They've been there for months, and so they come to us until they're ready to go home so that we can get them back on their feet, doing the things that they used to do before.
You saw all extremes, you saw the very ill patients, the patients without their family, without their friends, without things happening in the real world, and them really not having a connection with that. With patients not really understanding what this virus was, patients that were cognitively impaired, and to them it just was very strange that suddenly we were all running around in full PPE gear, and just the importance that you put on communication for patients with cognitive impairment, and then the non-verbals, the eye contact, the lip reading, whatever it might be, and it took us such a long time to really understand how to communicate better wearing a mask. You
took a break to go travelling, and then obviously COVID-19 hit, and then you decided to put yourself onto the front line, literally the front line, going to people's homes. Why did you decide to do that? Or what was the calling that made you decide that you wanted to go do it?
I think if you're a nurse, it's really hard to then not be a nurse. You get itchy feet, and when the opportunity arose, I was just like, yeah, let's go. I'm not sure if the me before I took my career break could have handled this, but I think if you'd asked me then about you'd be working on the front line in a pandemic, I'd have probably been like, oh no, I wouldn't go near that. But yeah, I definitely feel that I've changed as a person and as a nurse, and I'm a lot more sure of myself and what I'm capable of.
How has the NHS looked after your guys' mental health during this, would you say? How have you leaned into each other, and how have you guys felt supported during this time?
The pressure comes and it gets more intense, more like this is actually here to stay. What are we going to do? How are we going to cope with this? And then that starts then impacting on everything else. So when you're in it and everything's really exciting and you're just like reacting because that's what we do best, and then actually you think, I can't do this for the foreseeable future. There's got to be something that we're going to be able to change. We've got to do something different. And what's that going to be? None of us know. So we just had to just take it as it came, really.
I've always been a very anxious person, which is one of the reasons why I struggled with going back to nursing so much. But it is about the team that I'm in and the support that I've received from them that have really kept me going through this, and having really experienced and probably kill me for saying this, but older nurses. They're just older than me. I'm the youngest one, who have just taken me under their wing, really. It's been tricky. Obviously, the pandemic has had an effect on so many people in so many different ways, and in some ways it's been really difficult seeing a lot of what's been going on and how bad COVID is. But in other ways we've felt really lucky, because at least we've been able to keep working and we've been able to do something about what's happening. So I think it's just about, for me, trying to just look on the positive side of things, and speak to people when you're not dealing with things or you need help dealing with something.
Do you think it's taught you more about your own personal power in a way, in that you're actually it's surprised you how resilient you've been through this whole thing?
Yeah, I think I feel a lot more resilient and feel a lot more tough, and that when things were altering daily and we were having to alter the way we work daily and having to move clinics and speak to patients and reassure patients, so yeah, I feel a lot more resilient, that I can cope.
People empower themselves. I think we've got in us a lot more than we realise, and you get thrown in this situation that we've all said, or imagine if this time last year somebody said this was going to happen, but we're all a lot more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
How did it affect your your family life? Because I guess if you're going out and you're having to work on the front line, and then you have to consider and you're worried about what's happening to your family, but also your patients and everything else.
I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she has cerebral palsy, so she is at risk, but not at risk compared to other children with the same disease. So I think for me it was the anxiety around juggling. I had to look after my team and my patients and do my job, but I suddenly had my daughter at home who's 10 years old, and not needy, but she was anxious as well. Suddenly I can't see my friends, and she hates COVID, by the way. So it's stopped her having her birthday party, which she had every year. So it probably had more an impact, I would say, on my family life, because I managed to keep work going, settled like you do. But in terms of the home front, I think, juggling childcare initially, every time there was a potential heartbreak, the kids had to stay at home and you had to stay with them, but still work virtually. I think that was a challenge, and still a challenge now, because the schools are still closing or threatening to close. So it will be good to see the other side of this.
And it's hard because I couldn't see my family for months and months, so I guess that was really, really tough. I lived with my boyfriend, so that helped. Kind of coming home, and I ended up switching off the news, because it's just kind of when you're working it and then you come home and see it more, that can bog you down. So I think everyone started doing all the Zoom quizzes and everything.
There's a colleague that I worked with last year on another project that I did for an inpatient unit in Kingswood Centre, and she kind of always brings me a bit back down to earth, because I'm saying, oh yeah, and she's like, oh gosh, you're getting home late, and I'm like, oh, it's mental, there's so much going on, you just got to do everything all of the time, just make sure you just keep your head above water. And she says to me, don't forget why you're doing it, because the job will still be there, but your kids won't. Do you know what I mean? This is ridiculous.
Babe, don't worry.
I don't even know why I'm getting so upset. It's so silly.
Just take a moment. You sit down and you talk to you guys, and you're so not used to talking about yourselves or talking about the amazing work you do.
Yeah.
And I think you guys need to give yourselves more credit for the incredible work you're doing day in, day out. Is there someone you can remember giving you an amazing piece of advice and you were like, wow, that's really amazing? Or someone who's really been kind of your hero in your career almost?
My rapid response team are incredible. I've got some really amazing women, Ahuna and Christine. They're all just incredible, and they've all got different qualities that make them really good nurses and really good professionals. And I just feel really lucky to be a part of a team. They all really inspire me.
Has it maybe taught you about the power of sisterhood and how incredible that can be when you lean into it as well?
I think just women uplifting women is, we don't give it enough credit, and I think we like to sometimes put women against each other, and that's just not the case. So it's not my experience anyway, especially in this situation. They've all been like just really supportive with the best intentions.
Despite all the horrible things that happened during that time, what did it kind of show you about the power of human resilience and kind of like humanity?
The support from everyone, like your local communities. I mean, we were getting things delivered to us and people showing their support, and obviously the Thursday claps were really nice. Yeah. But also, like, you know, I was getting messages from my friends and my family, my loved ones, like saying, oh, just checking in, seeing on how I was, and that was really nice too. And more professionally, I guess, those people who did have COVID, who did come through it, like being able to work with them and seeing them, you know, getting people from who were like bedbound and not able to move or even stand up without like rasping for breath, having them leaving the ward a few weeks later like walking, was just like, that kind of kept me going because it meant I was making a difference.
A lot of it for me is just having the support of colleagues. Like the clap thing they put out, I don't know whose idea that was, but they really need thanking, because that really, it made us feel like everyone cared. Like, because usually, obviously everyone appreciates the NHS, but not, you don't really understand, you kind of take it for granted, don't you, like anything else. But actually that was quite nice. That kind of helped us through. I mean, everyone looked forward to that point of the week where everyone was, the whole nation was thanking you for doing your job. So even when we was going out and my husband was like, oh yeah, we're all clapping for you. And I was like, well, you're not, because I'm not on the front line. I'm behind the scenes.
Do you see yourself as a hero in a way?
Oh no, I don't. I know there's this thing about the hand clapping. Yeah. I mean, when I look at my other colleagues that maybe work on the wards, that have directly managed COVID patients for longer periods of time, I probably see them as more of an hero, because I would probably be very scared. We did help on the wards up here, and I did find that quite anxious at the time, because I've not worked on a ward for about 18 years. So suddenly to go into the ward setting to help during COVID was very nerve-wracking. So I wouldn't see myself as a hero, but I think I would see the staff that are on the wards, that are looking after patients, that are positive, because I think the thought of the risk is even more stronger, because yes, you've got PPE, but we all make mistakes, we're all human, and that's where the risk of the infection comes in. So I would see them as more heroes, and I would see myself as supporting the networks.
If you could give any advice to anyone who's watching this, who maybe thinks, oh, we're coming to the end, the vaccine's coming, what would you want to say about the impact of what this year's had and why we need to keep going?
I've been able to see firsthand what families are going through, and even though we think, oh, we're coming out the other side, there are still people out there losing their loved ones or having to deal with this somewhere in a house, somewhere that it's still very, very real. And I think it's just to, keep following the rules, keep being mindful of what's still out there until, it's safe to say that we're out on the other side.
If someone's going to come say to you and be like, I want to join the NHS, what advice would you give them? Would you say, just go for it, do it?
As stressful as this job is, I love my job, and it's going to sound very cliche, but when they say to you, if you love what you do, you never have to work a day in your life. Like, majority of the time I'm bouncing out ready for the morning. I am so happy to come into work. I really do love my job.
I think it's an amazing career. No matter how much I've thought, and I have thought before, have I made the right decision? Because it can be tough. I don't want to romanticize the whole thing, that it's one of the best careers that you can ever do, but there are days when you're like, this is really hard, I don't know if I can keep doing it. But when I wasn't doing it, it was all I was thinking about. It's just so fulfilling, and it just gives you so much purpose.
Oh, it's an amazing profession. Yeah. Why would I still be in the NHS this many decades into my career? It is an amazing, amazing profession.